Behind the scenes, I was between like starting stuff and the other things. I started really hard on that. Yeah. Before we came. Okay. So, no, ever since I got a toddler, all I can watch is like kids shows. Yeah, so I was like, like to watch them.
All right, we're gonna get started, everybody. Everybody get coffee, pastry, ready to go? Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for coming down to Tigard. You are not in a random building at the mall. This is actually the Driveway headquarters. We're super stoked to be a part of the PDX Design Festival this year. My name is Nicole Morse. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a design manager here at Driveway. For those of you who aren't familiar with Driveway, we are innovating how people buy and sell cars online. Our mission is a little grander than that. We aim to make car buying and car ownership accessible to anyone, anywhere, from wherever they feel most comfortable. The team, the design team here at Driveway is called Experience Design. We like to refer to ourselves as XD. You might have seen our donuts. Our team is a team of over 30 designers. The group consists of product design, content design, and UX research. And we are all across the country. We are from Seattle all the way down to San Diego. Our team is here in Portland. It's all the way to Baltimore. And in fact, a lot of our team is joining us remotely right now. Screen team. That totally failed. They were supposed to like emoji hi. They are here. So what are we doing here today? What's really unique about both our product and our team is that from inception to where we are today has happened in just the last 2 years. And it's also happened during a global pandemic. So our team went from 1 designer all the way to 30, and we did all that remotely. So we really needed to figure out how to work together collaboratively. We really built that into the core of our culture. And to do that, we had to create frameworks on how we were going to work together so that collaboration would be both efficient and inclusive. So today we're going to give you all sort of a sneak peek, an inside look at different ceremonies and rituals we've designed to foster collaboration. We're also going to share our experience of collaborating across disciplines, so product design and content design. And then we're going to give you some tangible insights into how we have utilized our tools and also design system to scale our collaboration. So before that, all of that, I have a call to action for the folks that are here today. While we are talking and you're listening, can you think about your own experiences with collaboration on your team? Has there been anything that's been novel or what's worked or what hasn't? Throughout the talk, we'll have you all share your experiences. And for those who share, I have a prize, the limited edition driveway XD swag pack that was designed by our own talented designer, Monse Garcia. Limited edition and covetable. So with that, I will go ahead and pass the mic. Clicker.
I have a mic, so probably that's not great things. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for driving out here. My name is Derek. I am a principal product designer here at Driveway, and the moon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Namoon. I hope you guys can hear me, but I'm a product designer here at Driveway as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Namoon. And also hi to everyone else joining us remotely. Namoon and I are going to be talking about our experiences designing for collaboration today. Primarily talking about a new ceremony, not new to the industry, but new to us, and that is design crit. Before we talk about design crit and collaboration in general, I think it's probably important to acknowledge that we work in Figma, and multi-cursor and the functionality to all be in the same digital canvas at the same time has changed everything, probably forever. No longer are we restricted to the huddling over someone's shoulder, staring at a single monitor, pointing at the screen while one person affects change on the canvas. This multiplayer capability has really enabled like some really magical experiences, both from a productivity, but also from a fun standpoint. And I included these slides of just the fun activity that we did at a stand-up the other day, where we did a photo shoot, where we traveled around the globe and visited some popular places that we had never been to. And we're able to admire the juxtaposition of architecture here at the entrance to the Louvre in Paris, France. And took a trip over to Venice and enjoyed that beautiful sunset. And then we still had enough time to make it back to Springfield and stream a PDX design talk from the couch. Eric and Lauren, I don't know what you're doing over there in the kitchen, but they'll make it their website. This is super cool to me. I'm probably going to frame this and put this on my desk, but more so than anything, I think that just really sort of embodies the spirit of collaboration, fun, and just making things with your teammates. One other tenet to get into before we kind of started talking about designing for collaboration is that it might be important to understand some of our design constraints. At Driveway, we are organized into different business verticals, and this is an excellent and super convenient way of organizing humans. However, if you're not careful, a siloed organization or team structure can sometimes manifest as silos in your product interfaces or tooling. And it does require being very intentional and mindful about the ways that you communicate and collaborate across your teams and across your organization. And this is sort of something that we set out to solve or improve with Design Crit, is that we wanted to improve the collaboration across our verticals. Our teams had a really good culture of sharing internally. There was lots of good collaboration between product engineering and design inside of each vertical, but oftentimes that reaching across the aisle and understanding what was going on in another area of the product was getting lost, or it wasn't as thorough as it could be. And so a group of teammates sat down and started to think about how could we improve this, and Design Crit was something that came to the top of the list as something that we were interested in trying. And like most things, we quickly realized through conversation that like a great crit wasn't going to happen by accident, and that we were going to need to be really intentional about the way that we designed the user experience of this new ceremony. Everything from how it was first introduced to the teams to the way that the information was documented and the tools that participants engage with when they're providing feedback. And so we walked away from those early conversations, trying like any good design exercise to identify goals, things that we wanted to accomplish with this effort. And we walked away thinking that we needed to design this so it was going to be easy to engage. It couldn't just be another meeting or another ceremony for people to engage with it. If it wasn't easy, designers wouldn't volunteer. It had to provide value. Our intent was for Design Crit not to be a gate, an approval process that individuals need to go through in order to allow their work to progress to the next stage. This is intended to be a designer-led ceremony that was for designers and by designers, and that we needed to make sure that it was actually going to generate results, net positive for everyone involved. And then it also needed to be fun. Like, if we're not having fun at work, what are we doing here, right? And then also it was really important to us to try to think as inclusively as possible. Not only do we have individuals in multiple time zones, but feedback can also be sensitive. So how can we make sure that we're including inclusive design practices into ceremony itself? And so the conversations evolved from there, and this may seem really basic, but one of the very first things that we started to define was roles. And we ended up with the presenter, participant, and moderator. And again, that seems really obvious, but the sheer act of putting some guardrails and some definition around what those roles are and how they engage or add value to the ceremony was really helpful and has been very valuable. Presenters, for example, are tasked with making sure that they can clearly define the problem space for their teammates. And that they can also concisely ask for very specific feedback. So participants know exactly what's expected of them. Participants are there to help elevate the work and to help improve the design, craft, and maturity of our product. And so participants have a few tenets as well. It's really important to be respectful. We want to make sure that all of our participants are attacking the problem and not the person. And participants are also there, or they are also support for them to stay on track, right? Like, a presenter is asking for very specific feedback, and participants are expected to make sure that the feedback that they're providing is sort of staying within the realm of what their teammate is asking for help on. And then we have moderators who are a little bit more than time cops, but they're to make sure that everyone in the room is able to have a voice and is being heard, things are staying on track, and that the presenter is getting what they hoped for. Going back to the notion of it needed to be easy to engage, feedback can be complex, and we also wanted to be intentional about making sure that the feedback was easy to engage with. At Driveway, we have somewhat of a robust infrastructure of internal tools in Figma, just different components and things that we use to provide inline feedback that go a little bit above and beyond the obfuscated comment feature that Figma currently has. And what we've done is we've created a very specific set of feedback components that's unique to the Design Crit ceremony. And each one of these components is grouped by a teammate and added to the review file. So there's really a very low barrier to entry for people to be able to provide feedback. Someone who's a junior designer and may not be familiar with Figma can easily know where to go and grab the correct feedback component to emote or respond in the way that they would like. A content designer who's pretty well versed in Figma but may not be interested in fussing with component properties or changing avatars can just easily copy and paste, and that feedback gets onto canvas quicker, and they have to think less. They don't have to think as hard about how to get it there. And we've also used things like color coding to make sure that the feedback is coded in specific ways. We use yellow sticky notes for questions, observations, just neutral comments in general. We use green sticky notes for positive and praise, and then red for feedback that elicits caution or concern. And this can create some pretty unique opportunities for moderators and participants, because as you zoom out on that canvas, you can quickly identify by color coding what areas of the design or the work that's being reviewed is receiving more positive or caution type feedback. And it allows group discussion to hone in to specific areas, and you can be a little bit more intentional and useful with the time that you have. It's important that the value was greater than the effort, and I think this goes back to just being really easy for people to engage. As a voluntary ceremony that is not a gate for users to engage with, making sure that it's something that they immediately see value in is going to make this ceremony more successful and hopefully in the end result in the product. And then to the fun. So we talked a little bit about our components, but not only do we try to inject color and lightheartedness into the way that we provide feedback, but just the way that the ceremony is conducted. We try to make sure that everyone just is positive and encouraging, and that there's plenty of endorphins and praise that's getting tossed around in the feedback sessions as well. This was probably one of my favorite collaborative experiences at Driveway, where Ellie, one of my teammates, wore this shirt. And then the idea came up to find a background that matched, and then magic happened, and history was made. Thinking about inclusivity, one of the other goals that we set out in designing this new ceremony is that we had to consider teammates in different office environments in multiple time zones, not quite to the extent of the Australian time zone that I was chatting with one of you earlier today, but we do have teammates scattered across the US. And we wanted to make sure that our schedule accommodated an optimal time for everyone, that it wasn't at the beginning of everyone's day or the end of someone else's day, and that it was a productive time. And we also wanted to be respectful of lunch because people have to eat. The group size was also something that we had plenty of discussion around. The group size couldn't be too big or too small, and we needed enough participants to cast a wide net and generate a broad perspective of feedback, but it couldn't be too large so that it would discourage participation, or maybe not everyone in the session would have an opportunity to provide feedback. And then two other ways that we've tried to be inclusive in the way that we've designed this ceremony is we've actually set up 2 rounds of feedback for each crit session, and each session will have 1 round of silent feedback and then 1 round of group discussion. And this has worked out pretty well for us so far. The silent feedback has really allowed for some cognitive processing before just verbally reacting to things. It allows people to listen to the presenter explain the problem space, and for them to navigate around the canvas and experience the design, the user interface, or the flows on their own, and process some of their own thoughts before just being required to verbally regurgitate feedback in a group setting. It's also ideal for teammates and individuals who are just less vocal teammates. Some people prefer asynchronous or written feedback, so this format allows that opportunity. And then also some feedback is just best written down, especially if you have a reference or you want to provide a link for something. We have a mechanism for our teammates to do that. And then we go into our group discussion, and this is where we can just really dig deeper. And it's an opportunity to prioritize the more complex feedback. I kind of mentioned the color coding of feedback and being able to observe different areas of the work that's getting different sorts of attention or different sorts of reactions. And this is an opportunity for feedback providers and presenters to ask qualifying questions, to dig into things, to understand the intent or the more intimate details of the feedback a little bit. And then it's also sometimes feedback is a little bit more complex and can be communicated better verbally. So trying to be inclusive, not only about the time zones and the size of the group, but thinking about the ways in which feedback is best delivered and received were all things that we try to be intentional about designing into the format or the team ritual. And Namoon is joining us remotely. Namoon played a huge role in not only designing a lot of the components, the feedback components that we use for Design Crit, but has also been an active participant, signs up regularly to bring work to Design Crit, and has been invited to provide feedback on other teammates' work. And so she wanted to share a few words today on her experience interacting with the ceremony so far.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Derek, for the context. I have been an active participant and presenter in Design Crit many times, and it has been a wonderful way to collaborate with my teammates. So as a presenter and a participant, I have been able to receive feedback from other teammates and provide feedback to other teams. This ceremony has given me the opportunity to get outside perspective from other teams and improve as a designer in so many different ways. So when I joined Design Crit as a presenter, I know that the feedback that I will be receiving will be immensely beneficial because of the structure of the crit. It is set up in a way that allows us to receive the best feedback, because when we present our work, there is a template that you see on the screen that we fill out, and it addresses who our target audience is, what stage our work is in, the context of the project, the goals and objectives, and the specific feedback we're looking for. So the feedbacks are always tailored to our specific question, which allows me to move forward with meaningful actions. Because Design Crit is very organized and a positive environment, it has been extremely productive and constructive. The silent feedback session, where everyone has time to write their feedback on a sticky note and then share their thoughts at the end of the session, is the perfect time that lets us review and provide the necessary feedbacks. And it has helped me to see what was missing from my designs and how things can be improved. And it really is a fun and safe space for all of us to share our work. An important part of, being a great designer is to be able to give and receive feedback. And Design Crit gives me that opportunity to practice my presentation skills, my design skills, my feedback skills. And so I'm really, really grateful for Design Crit. And I want to thank you, Derek and team, for starting Crit. Thank you.
Thank you, man. That was a lot of nice things to say about that ceremony, but it's not always nice. Like, we've received some negative feedback, some things that we've already implemented to improve, but I think that is another aspect of this that I'm trying to relate to a regular design process, is that like any good design process, listening to your users, doing a little bit of releasing and testing, and then iterating on your releases is really important. And we're trying to do that with our ceremony as well. So doing things like providing retros for presenters and participants to provide feedback, or async. Recently sent out some polls to gather feedback, and just regular tuning to make sure that once you release something out into the wild, it's not etched in stone, and you have opportunities to continue to refine as your team evolves and grows. And in closing, for my call to action, is that we're a scrappy team. Like, we didn't invent Design Crit, but we tried to be really intentional about how we incorporated it into our organization so it best fit our needs. And whether you're a team of 2 or a team of many, I'm a believer that you can improve or you can benefit from improved collaboration. So don't wait for permission. If you're not already designing your collaboration experiences, try it out and see how it feels. Be intentional about what you roll out, because there are implications, right? Like, rolling something out in an organization can be difficult, but just test and iterate and have fun collaborating.
Actually wondering, is this for long-term projects or shorter-term projects? I work for City of Tigard, and a lot of our stuff is quick turnaround, but we're both the designers there and do a lot of quick critiques. What's your timeline on this today?
Yeah, so let me make sure I understand the question first, and I'll try to give the best answer that I can. Is so one of the tenets that we set out or encourage designers is to bring work earlier to Crit. I think there's a certain percentage of work that works really good when you're able to open it up for feedback, when you're sharing a little bit earlier. Things that are like 20 to 30% seems to kind of be like an ideal time to open things up and be receptive to feedback, because if you get too much further down the path, any feedback that you receive might impede your process or your ability to maybe get something out on time. And so the idea is to try to bring something earlier to the team. But I think your question is maybe a little bit more specific to the size of the project. Is that correct?
Well, that goes too. We have a variety of things. A lot of the day-to-day is just quick little things, but we also have some bigger items we're working on, internet that we're updating. So yeah, it varies.
One of the things that we're trying to figure out, and we're still massaging with our internal practices, is for larger works, like chunking it out into smaller bits, right? Because we only have a finite amount of time for these ceremonies, and we want to be respectful of people's time, for one, and make sure that we're not taking up too much time, and also that we're allowing the entire team ample opportunity to engage with this. So we have a small amount of time, and the challenge has been to figure out how to take larger projects and pull out bits that you can receive, that you can ask for feedback on. Like, the goal is to not take an entire complex flow to design crit and ask for feedback on the entire thing, because that conversation is just going to be too broad. It's going to be too hard to narrow in on meaningful actions or, actionable feedback. And so trying to pull out those nuggets that you can reach across the aisle or find other teammates that might be able to provide insight or perspective into something that you're working on to help shape the larger project, if that's helpful.
Thank you.
A question about, when you were talking about there's not too big of a team, not too small of a team for this ceremony. Have you found like this is the number of people that's like the sweet spots, everything's like an effective conversation? And also, how do you know who to bring into the conversation? Let's say you're building this project that you might want to have like the marketing expert or the subject matter expert, probably some manager that is related, or like a sales team member. So like, how do you also define who should be in this ceremony?
I love this question. Excellent questions, both of these. This is one, again, that I don't know that we have it perfect, but we've sort of landed on 6 participants. 6 to 8 seems to kind of be a sweet spot where everyone has an opportunity to provide feedback and have a voice during the group discussion without the ceremony taking up too much of people's time. We currently have it structured so presenters get to choose who they invite. We suggest that a content designer is present, a design systems representative is present, and that there's a broad spectrum. We assume that you've probably had an opportunity to share this work with people on your internal team. So we urge people or suggest that they sort of reach out to other teams and invite people from different areas of the product to participate. And so it's not mandated, but I think the idea is to empower the designer to choose who they think they're going to receive the most useful feedback from. I'm gonna answer your question so far. Is there one thing that I missed? I felt like there's a third thing.
No, I think that was very clear. I think it also depends, like the type of company. A company with only 3 designers, that's my internal team. So at that point, decide, this product, maybe, I don't know, the energy and climate practice team will have a say into how this product is being shaped or marketing. And I like the idea of like the 20-30% of the project is done. Might as well just bring them into the conversation for that inclusivity part of it. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go for it.
You share that component library?
Yes, absolutely. So the component library started as a side project, and talk to me afterwards. There is it's called the Collabo Kit in the Figma community, where it sort of originated from. It's not as robust as what we use today internally. It doesn't make use of all of the latest and greatest component properties and things that Figma has to offer, but it's a good starting point for some of that visible inline feedback.
Yeah. Great.
I understand this is like an internal process that you guys do, and I'm wondering how frequent do you guys test with users like outside of your organization? Or do you wait until it's more high fidelity and then you guys can go to the users or?
Yeah, so we're fortunate to have one in-house. So this question is a little less about the design crit ceremony, and a little bit more about the research and how we sort of test the designs once they make it past crit or out into the real world and customers are interacting with it. I will answer that question by saying this is one of the areas that I think we're still maturing as an organization, but we have a super talented researcher on staff, and we do have initiatives that are doing qualitative and quantitative type research.
Has it helped when, after you get that feedback and then you put together your work, when you're showing it to your stakeholders, you found, and has our stakeholders seen an improvement in work after crit? What do you say?
I absolutely have.
Okay.
I think one thing in that respect is like, I mean, that's the goal. I can't promise or guarantee that's gonna happen every time. But one thing that it can do is increase a designer's confidence in a specific decision, provide them a broader perspective of how the thing that they're designing is impacted by other areas of the product, how it integrates. And so it's easier to tell a story, and it's also great presentation practice, right? So as it's a very safe environment and low barrier to entry to sort of practice those presentation skills before you get in front of maybe a presentation situation that's maybe a little bit more high stakes.
Excellent.
Austin.
Thank you, everyone.
Y'all looking really good today. Hi, my name is Addison. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a senior UX writer at the XU organization. And I'm going to tell you a little story about how collaboration changed the content design organization. So, at the beginning, Driveway had a challenge to solve, still has a challenge to solve. We are asking customers to buy a vehicle, one of the largest purchases they could ever make outside of a house, online. To us, a new unknown brand in a pandemic. And to be successful, we have to build an experience that builds trust with our customers. We had to place value in the words that are being used. We had to be transparent. We had to be empathetic, no car industry jargon, no salesmanship. So we valued content strategy from the very beginning, and I was hired on with this strategy in mind. But our content roles were very different back then. The first manifestation of the content design role at Driveway was called a UX content strategist, which at the time was a bit of a blend of marketing, copywriting, and some UX writing. And we wore a ton of hats. Projects could be a homepage H1 edit. We could write a long form FAQ article, copywriting for designs within our purchase flow. In fact, my very first project at Driveway was writing a script for our very first promotional video. So work in those early days was very assembly line-like. Product would create the product brief, our designers would work on the designs, and then send them to me with lorem ipsum, and I would fill in those boxes. So work kind of flowed in one direction, with content being towards the end of that assembly line. We were also silent contributors working on very constrained projects. Projects were often limited to individual screens, piecemeal updates, because we were still building a comprehensive flow, comprehensive process. The benefit to this process was it was super fast, and we were killing it. It was really exciting. It was also a bit bananas. And sometimes things would get tricky because of this assembly line process. Problems would come up that were super hard. I would get tasked to write some copy for a screen, but something about it just couldn't quite nail down. Right? In fact, one instance, I revised copy for 3 weeks, and it was literally like a headline and 3 sentences, and I could not nail it, and we couldn't quite figure out what was going on. This wasn't just me like flipping out. We were like, as a team, we were coming together like, why isn't this working? So we realized then, and by the way, the visual design was exactly what we had asked for. So again, still couldn't quite figure out what's going on. And then we realized that this wasn't a words problem, it was a UX problem. And when we realized that it wasn't the words on that screen that was the root of the issue, and we zoomed back and looked at the entire interaction, we were able to realize where the actual UX issues were, and we found the root of the problem, and then we adjusted our flow to improve the user experience from there. And we learned a lot from that experience. And on the next project, we got to shift our strategy a little bit. I got the opportunity to work with our product designers from the very beginning instead of at the end of that assembly line. We got to think holistically with less constraints, and I was able to consider a content strategy from the very beginning all the way to the end of the interaction. And it made a massive difference in how good the work was. This particular piece of work I'm showing right here was our very first cart abandonment email campaign. And that project by itself decreased cart abandonment by 20%, which is a lot of money when you consider that each general transaction is tens of thousands of dollars. So big win. And so we figured out that when product design and content design and the product org come together as one, magic happens. And content design was never quite the same. So the discipline evolved from content strategists to content designers. And we moved away from the many marketing hats and copywriting hats, away from piecemeal approaches, and started to structure our projects much more collaboratively. We could focus on our disciplines, and we discovered new ways to enhance our designs and improve our customer experiences. We began to hire people who specialize, UX writers, editorial writers, and content design system specialists. And the product team, design team, and content team began to learn how to better collaborate with each other. Through this discovery process, the content design team learned a few things to help us collaborate with everybody else. First was, that's a look great myself talk. So the first one, the earlier that designers and content designers get together, the better. We are UX heroes, and we are greater than the sum of our parts. The more time we get to spend collaborating together, the more time we share on a project in unison, the more fantastic the outcomes are. And when you involve creative disciplines earlier and often in the process, the talents of your contributors find new ways to manifest themselves. Content design found new ways to support product managers, for instance, at the product brief stage, concept definition, naming stuff. We're word nerds. This is our best flex, right? Content designers are communicators, and our talents come in handy like wherever you can find words to put on stuff. For instance, we can also help craft presentations to get your projects across the board with executives. Where is he? Great. Okay. And problem solving takes time. And problem solving, like children, takes a village. We needed to make space to process information together and work on tasks as a team. So this started on the content design side as weekly stand-ups, where we talked about what we're working on. You're all familiar with the stand-up. I have a very complicated relationship with stand-ups. I find them super annoying. However, that was the first place where we could share what we were going through. We could share our knowledge, where we figured out what our individual and group needs were. And creating space has many values, not just help with reviewing your work. More recently, we've started to experience with a content design specific to the content design organization and a content design systems review process. These ceremonies are helping everyone on the content team shoulder the collective weight of projects, so everything doesn't have to fall on just one contributor for a project. We can all feel safer knowing that we don't have to think of everything by ourselves, right? So I've talked a little bit about how collaboration has affected the content design organization. and what has worked with us for you, like on like a systems point of view. So, and this, by the way, this whole slide, this lot, this could be an entire presentation by itself. Here we go. I want to talk about how you can find your voice, how you like to collaborate, because how you think and how you synthesize information matters. And how you like to collaborate may look a little bit different than how your peers like to collaborate. A great place to start with this is relationship building. And you never stop building relationships at work and life in general. You'll get new hires, new managers, you'll work with new people directly. And there's also going to be people that you work with that are outside your immediate influence. Building rapport with stakeholders is a great place to start, but also find people who you click with, who you jive with. Find ways to spend time with them at work, ask them for their help, and offer yourself to them as well when they need your support. Find what your strengths are. What do you love to do within your specific discipline, and what you'd also like to do outside of that? As you collaborate, you might find novel processes or other types of communication styles that work for you. I'm a verbal processor, for instance, and sorry to my manager who hears me blab on constantly. As a verbal processor, I really benefit from talking out problems aloud. I'll often answer my own question as I'm speaking. But some folks do their best work when they work silently side by side. You may like some combination of the two of those, and as you discover what works for you, share that with the people that you work with, and then ask them the same. And finally, working relationships benefit from boundary setting, just like all of the other relationships in your life. Boundaries can be defined by the project, and which can help you say, oh, I think this is a great question for the product team to answer. Boundaries can also be personal ones. I have a good amount of work on my plate. Let me talk with my supervisor before saying yes to this project. As you build your relationships and discover your strengths, boundaries help you protect your own resources, and modeling boundaries help others set their own. And as we continue to learn about our collaboration styles, these learnings have been invaluable over and over again. And I hope that this story of content design has sparked a few ideas.
Does anybody want to, question?
Oh, well, maybe really random, but when you find yourself like making that switch in the strategy, do you tackle, this is a website that is gonna be for desktop and mobile? You make sure that the copy you're writing is adjusted to both, or do you find yourself like working first in this one? It's probably the priority our users are listening in mobile, and then try to expand that in desktop, or what is the approach?
That's a really good question. And as you alluded to, we are definitely a mobile first company. And that's not because we want it to be, it's just because that's the reality of what we realized, right? So, and when we're thinking about content and how it plays well, we do tend to go for a short and sweet. We don't want to do a lot of information, and that tends to translate well to both kinds of experiences, so that the large format screens and smaller ones, and the font's just a little bit bigger. It's that tends to take up some good space. Yeah, I haven't noticed our content strategy change too much, and we really try to componentize a lot. So we kind of think of like, when we think about when we're building one piece, how is this going to scale everywhere else? That's kind of built into the process as well.
Thank you.
Does anybody have a story they want to share about collaboration? Story time?
Story time. I told a story. It's your turn.
All right, I'm gonna give our swag pack to our, story?
Yeah.
Oh, go for it.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sean from Melbourne, Australia. We all over the last few years went through a whole lot. Melbourne had at the time the longest running lockdown, and so collaboration was like super important, and seeing the grit is super inspiring. We did our best to use online tools as much as we could. One tool we found, which you should totally check out, is called Sprout, and it's like plays into like a lot of the fun kind of piece that the crit was kind of playing at. You could your videos could be like whatever size on screen, so you could have I was like a giant overlog and have a team of like 2 people or the other way around, and like you could create like face frames and like jump in there and like have a lot of fun. So like the importance of like that fun piece, like coming to work when you're in lockdown, you do all that outside your house for more than an hour a day, was like absolutely critical. And then bridging that into serious work was the challenge. Like, how do you like feel like, all right, no more fun, like let's do some serious stuff. And what we found that to be the best way, similar to those roles, but like often especially like depending on the hierarchy of teams, if there's like a lead designer, because we're quite a small team, and they were always presenting their work, what we found worked really well in that period of time was to rotate who was that presenter, even if they were the primary designer on. And so understanding that problem was then shared, because the person who actually designed it had to like sit with the presenter and explain everything so that they could then explain it to the next person. So then you have this like shared knowledge base, which is really, really cool. But and now I'm the only remote worker on the other side of the world, and I'm going to have to be inventing a whole bunch of new processes, but I think like what we shared today is going to really help me. Yeah.
Also gonna give you one for all your awesome questions.
But John?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a great segue into the tooling conversation. That's what we use for tools. That was an awesome story. Raise of hands, who's used Figma or uses Figma primarily for your our team? Half here. So I think this talk will be relevant for you, regardless of what you use, but it's definitely Figma centric. I apologize, but maybe it'll get you into Figma too if you're not using it already. So I'm Tyler, I'm a principal product designer, and in my role, I'm fortunate enough to help advance our design practices on the team. I get to work on internal projects from time to time. And at the start of the year, I got to partner on a project to mature how we use Figma. So that's the results of that project. So at the center of working collaboratively is the design work itself. So we use Figma. And as a team, drive Figma quickly. So how we use Figma was being loosely managed, and each of our journey teams kind of adopted their own practices. And just by using Figma, we got pretty decent access to each other's work. We got the commenting tools so we could share feedback. But we quickly realized as we grew that we had some pain points with access and wayfinding. Especially when you're collaborating with team members outside of design, you realize they couldn't find the work at all. So we had something to fix. So this project we embarked on was a bit of a research project. We interviewed teammates internally, did research online for best practices, and we spent time just experimenting, concepting what we could do better in Figma. So what I have on screen are some of the results of these little strategies we found we implemented as an organization. So I'll give you a little walkthrough and an example of the early days of where we got to. We were working with groups of teams. So in this example here, we've got the checkout team and the shop team in this Figma team. Figma has a concept of teams. So somebody's drilled down here. And let's say they're looking for a project that was in the shop user experience. They would have to come in here and identify, oh, it's probably in the 2021 project. I think it's where it would be. Drill down in, and there's a massive array of files in there. As you can see by these cover sheets, they look nice. So we had some things going for us, but they were generally labeled by a year, not a feature. So then somebody's digging around. So I think it was done in Q2 of 2021, and they had to try and find that file. What it meant is that generally people are always tapping people on the shoulders, asking if somebody from a different journey team who might have built that feature, can you just send me a direct link? There's no real self-serving there. So that's where we were, and the real turning point for improving wayfinding started with our concepting. This is an older screenshot of what Figma looked like. This is early in the year. what if we made each of our journey teams or each of our customer experiences of how we align ourselves? So regardless of teams, the customer experience, its own team in the sidebar in Figma. So then when you click on that team, you're seeing an array of files that are specific to that customer experience. And then when you come in here, it's quite a bit different look. We paired that concept with the cover sheet we already had and advanced that cover sheet to have a color-based system. So now all these statuses are colored, so it's quick to scan. And then we took the groups within Figma and broke them down into swim lanes for file status. So suddenly we're getting a radically different view that somebody can easily scan, and there's gonna be a lot less work in each swim lane. So I can identify like, oh, I know the shop team is working on a project right now, so I can dig in. We're probably only gonna have, 2 to 10 tops, maybe like 5 active projects at a time. So I can go in and quickly engage with the work that I saw somebody share or saw somebody talking about and see what they're up to. We ended up with work in progress, in development, complete, source of truth, playground, and then there's an archive swim lane off screen. But that's how we're dividing our work up. The playground was a late add, but it's been a space for people to just experiment. We didn't want it to be too rigid. So that was one of those items we got from the team participating, providing feedback, is that they want a place where they can just spin up a file, and it's still not distracting. File naming was another big wayfinding improvement for us. Not something you think about, but every team's naming their file a little differently. So standardizing that was a big improvement. We went with year, quarter, project name, and team. And what has me excited about the file naming is that we started breaking down our files into, instead of it might be like the search bar, and that encapsulates the work from a whole quarter or a whole year. We really started to name our files by feature. So you can see here, BDP locations as a feature name. And by focusing on better titles and breaking our work down into smaller features, we unlock the search tool in Figma, which I don't have to use it often because we have such clear organization of files, but it's a really great feature that beforehand our files were named SRP Q1, or SRP 2021. So it's a name that made it really hard to search for work. All right, so this is diving into the file. Try to give you a little wayfinding for those who don't use Figma. Inside of the file, your work would be off to the canvas on the right, and you've got a layering system, which would be common in most tools. So we spent a bit of time on this layering system. It's all handmade by your team. So we tried to set some standards there as well, and focusing on versioning. So we use some tactics like bringing in a spacer to group items. Asking for rounds of review. So we've got here concept R2, then into design R1, design R2. So really putting emphasis on saving your past work in an old round. We reverse the order. So Figma natively stacks your work with the newest on the bottom. We reverse that order. So when you come in, you see your newest work on top. And then you'll see the fun active dot, little green traffic light. We're putting active dots on the pages we're working on so that somebody can jump in and follow along and know where the design is at. Any of these others first order? Oh, emojis. Emojis are used by a lot of teams, I think, in the file naming, and it was definitely something that our team really liked. So we decided to standardize it. So when you go from one team's file to the next, you're looking at the same emoji and you're wayfinding it with next string. This. I'm missing something I really wanted to hit on. Dates, team review, first order. Okay, well, I'll skip it. Sorry. So another big change for us was we got really comfortable with working in different files that we were handing off to our engineers. It made it super clear for engineers that they could be engaging in your project in your one file, but when the work was ready and what was ready to be worked on was very clear by separating files. But with the swim lane approach, we wanted to move a file down the swim lane. So we wanted to keep the engineers and the work in the same place, which had other benefits for us. But it meant we needed to take precautions with their user experience in the file. And so we put the pages that they would be responsible for. We're using spacers, we're using labels, and we're putting it at the top of our file. So because they're not using it every day, they should be optimized for. And we installed some traffic lights for them to let them know when the work was or wasn't ready. So it's almost more like a safeguard. They wanted to make sure that they could quickly come in and see if the work was ready and know where to find the work. All right, so this is very similar to Design Crypt, but it was one that we waffled on and excited about, that we found value in and ended up adding it in. You might have seen the back team reviews. So we've added in this concept of team reviews in your design work. We have our presenting files in there as well. But team reviews were something that we weren't sure were going to have value. And we might have forcefully put it in as a test. And I've seen a ton of value since then. So we're encouraging teams, as soon as you've had maybe a back and forth with your partner, as soon as you're expanding the conversation, that could be with your project manager, it could be bringing in other designers, it could be creating your own little design kit in your team before you take work on to the next round. Create a new page, duplicate all your works and you versioned it, and it's not instructed to it. You create a new page with the exact same work that you can then push around, copy, iterate on, then somebody doesn't feel bad about grabbing a piece of work, writing all over it, saying, hey, here, this is what I was talking about. We're also using the collaboration toolkit in there often, so that somebody can grab one of the stickers or comment cards, and you end up with you don't always end up with this robust of view, but you can end up with kind of a messy space to experiment with. If you're ready, you create a round 2, copy over that round 1, and you've got all your notes and ideas that you move into the next round with in your work reserved in the previous round. So our goal with this versioning system and with the team reviews and keeping everything in one place was to tell a project story. So you can come back in our files and look through the bottom and see how many rounds it took. We're adding dates on the reviews, both with, so any of the major reviews are adding dates on. So it's like you get a version history that you're creating along the way, and you can remember back to like round 2 and dig back in. What was that idea? We would like to round 2 that somebody called out. Kind of get a history of how you created it. Right, and to wrap up, I want to give you a scenario. So let's say this is Dennis. Dennis is working on a feature, and it intersects with the account experience team. And so he is trying to dig through their files previously at Driveway. He would have just had to reach out to them. That's always how we worked. And it was like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Reach out to you. Especially if like the project manager or the director was always reaching out to them directly. So now with this new structure, we've enabled search, we've enabled a concept of source of truth file. We're still building and maturing, and we have a completed work catalog. So going back to this view, this completed work should house all our feature designs. So now Dennis can self-serve, he can go identify the feature he wants. It's going to go to the shop team, dig down into completed work and scan those files for that feature he's looking for. That's it. Those are our strategies for figuring out these great employee farming. That was pretty deep and techy in the Figma. But does anyone have questions about access?
More about the change management piece, like where you are now. Yes, into that. To get that.
Yeah, good question. What type of investment? And being super fortunate for a business that puts money into that investment and seeing part of it was growth and seeing how we were growing in our practices more, and it was causing that access issue. We probably spent a quarter doing research. It's a background project. A lot of our internal DevOps projects are background projects when we're free. Derek and I are the two principals, and we're fortunate to work on those. We partnered with the design manager on that, and then obviously the designers to solicit feedback. So set up interview questions, started to gather feedback, did online research, and started building concepts. It was about a quarter. And then it took another half quarter, maybe like 2 months to solidify the decisions and roll out. We have lead designers on our verticals. And so we leverage them for decision making as well, and hold them and have them help shape the final view.
And like, having you've worked with lots of designers, like the way people work can differ just dramatically. How are you finding like compliance with the way things are done, and is there like a terrible word to use, but like policing, like
There is not a heavy policing right now. Compliance is moderate at this level. At this level, I'd say it's moderate. And this level is excellent. So everyone's broken down, well, that's the initial wayfinding.
Yeah.
So people have broken down their work into swim lanes, they're managing the swim lanes, they're changing the color of the cover sheet when they change statuses. They're making sure work gets into the complete, the file naming is there so we can quickly search. I'd say that the practices of the versioning within the page are there and they're common knowledge now. But part of it's probably on better documentation.
Yeah.
We are currently working off of like, here's your example file, and we build more tools to make it easier. So I'd say it's there and the team does a good job, but some teams still have things that are working better for them. And they haven't bubbled up to be board wide yet.
imagine it requires a lot of like rituals around this organization. It's like update the status on Friday at 4 p.m.
I think that's something that we could use and improve on. And we have, I think we're, my guess now is that we're heavily relying on the lead designers to manage files and status. And, yeah, and so it's becoming a one person.
Yeah.
But the amount of features you have going at one time, it's usually like 4 or 5 files per team. So it's not like you're moving files rapidly down through statuses. Derek?
You mentioned research, that you like actually had a formal process of asking teams questions and doing designers. Talk about that a little bit, like what does that look like?
Sure. Yeah, that was a decision, I feel like partly motivated by Eric, one of our design managers, to play with our research software. So we use Geek Scout, the software we're using for customer research, and we set up a formal set of questions and set up interviews, and we had designers share their screen. So we made sure to get an array. We went from the director, I think we didn't hit a couple project managers, a lot of senior designers, made sure to hit leads and content designers. So we're getting a lot of varied opinions. 12 internal research sessions, gathered those notes, looked for what bubbled up and what stood out. And so one thing, for example, was the versioning. That was already a popular technique people were using, and we thought we could just collaborate on it and make it stronger to try and. A lot of people were doing a lot, the majority of their work in progress work in one file, but every time they'd have a new round of design review, they might have multiple design review files and then a final. So we just expanded on that. Wanted to say like, encourage people to create rounds so that they weren't destructive to the previous work. I think that's the bulk of the customer, the user research we did. Outside of that, it's a lot of online research for best practices that other people are doing. You'd be surprised. I thought there'd be like a silver bullet out there we could grab. So it took a little bit longer to concept. Don't be afraid. We set up multiple examples, shared them with multiple people, and got people's solution practices. So,
Going to hear from our design systems friends, both of which are in San Diego.
Thanks, Nicole. Can everybody hear me all right?
Up just a little bit.
Good, cool. Hey, everybody. So I'm Dan Simonowski. I'm lead design system designer here at Driveway. Joined by my colleague Turtle Angelo, senior designer in design system at Driveway. As Nicole said, we're both calling from our respective home offices in San Diego. Total coincidence. That wasn't planned. So we're going to talk about design systems a little bit. I won't go into too much detail about like the nitty gritty, but what are design systems? Design systems tend to be collections of tried and true solutions kind of for easy access, saves you from relitigating things. And that's most often captured through documentation or design components. And a lot of times design systems are referred to as maybe a source of truth or maybe a living document. And I write living document on this slide because I do think these descriptions sometimes do a little bit of disservice to the purpose behind these tools. For example, living document to me, despite seeming alive, it still feels pretty static, like a fixed point. And I also don't think it's very accurate or helpful when you're characterizing like the regular churn, for lack of a better word, churn of new or optimized interactive features, because at the end of the day, a resource in itself isn't going to promise coherence without, some orchestrated coordination or communication. So I'm gonna go on like a quick tangent, just bear with me. I'm really into the writing of Christopher Alexander, who was an architect and an urban planner. And so there's this quote: "We're searching for some kind of harmony between two intangibles, a form which we have not yet designed and a context which we cannot properly describe." So in here, he is referring to the challenge of designing physical spaces in an increasingly, complex world, specifically creating designs that mesh well with the activities kind of within those spaces. And so, those of us who work in and around UX, like our ears should be burning, hearing this, like we work on meeting users where they're at, like all the time, right? And so I'm feeling it's extra relevant to design system work because ironically, even though design systems exist to provide like better, clearer certainty, the actual work to getting to that certainty can be kind of messy, a little convoluted or confusing, because we are wrangling multiple intangibles, whether those be shifting business needs, maturing design vocabularies, or maturing product ambitions. Oh, my slides.
Commandeer.
Yeah, could you commandeer, please? Thank you. Okay. Can I just tell you to advance?
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry about that. But so this just brings me back to a point where the kind of danger of designing shared resources and shared spaces is that when these spaces or resources are left unattended, it's not long before the trust kind of starts to fall away. And it's frankly an insult when an infrastructure doesn't acknowledge just like the complexity we face as like unique individuals. And as creators, as designers or artists, when we allow ourselves to think romantically about, these ideas of like shared purpose, shared space, words like dignity, agency, and community are going to kind of come to mind. And these aren't terms that are focused around the resource. They're really focused more around the people. Next slide, please. And so with that in mind, let's kind of give something a try. And instead of saying living document, let's try living documented. And so as a design system person, I'm already breathing a big sigh of relief because I'm not observing the deficits that may exist between our product and our documentation, whether those deficits exist one way or the other. I can really focus more on the dynamics of how we exist as a high functioning design organization. I can also document, insights that inform how we can continue to develop and eventually thrive. Next slide, please. And so at Driveway, that's kind of the approach that we're going for. We formally kicked off the design system operations at the beginning of 2022. That's when we became a centralized team. It was federated before, more or less. We did kick off with a collection of kind of workhorse Figma components. But right off the bat, we wanted to start prioritizing meeting designers where they were at, focusing on enablement rather than keeping design elements under lock and key. And admittedly, this shift was not without some frustration. There was like some adjustment because, we're saying, hey, we're going to make things like a little more mushy, get used to it. But we quickly learned that when you shift focus towards designers rather than designs, interesting things really begin to happen. And so to go through a couple of those new ceremonies, I'll pass it over to Turtle.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. You heard it before, but nothing is great. Nothing great is brainstormed, designed, or built alone. And with our primary focus being on enablement in the design system team, collaboration is our bread and butter. So let's dive into a few of the ways that our team collaborates with the rest of XD. Next slide. So despite having documentation available, designers often have questions around their particular needs. It was important to us that designers see us as a resource and have a clear path to working together. So our weekly office hours provide a consistent platform for designers to bring any and all questions and for conversations around implementation, problem solving, and new components. Conversations also can be loose or subjective, future visioning or airing grievances. These discussions give designers better clarity as well as cross-vertical visibility. Furthermore, design systems gains an understanding of needs not being met by existing documentation or components. Next slide. So standards and processes require time to form and research to identify. Research spikes get spun up when we observe confusion or inconsistencies. We often reach outside of design systems to retrieve practical information from principals, writers, to ask what's not working or could this work for you? So we can gain visibility regarding blind spots, previous stopgap measures, and future opportunities for optimization. Discussing and monitoring different aspects of the system helps to identify opportunities for improvement and gives us an idea of the distance between the current state of things and our desired state. Our goal is clear but flexible design and implementation standards. When we do it right, we improve design cohesion while leaving room for new and novel solutions. Next slide. Sometimes collaboration is spontaneous and ends up spawning a formal practice of working together. So after receiving some unexpected help from a fellow Journey team, we realized getting them involved in creating components for design systems deepened their understanding of how it works and is useful to them and solidified their buy-in. It also provided the design system team visibility into designer use cases like never before. The experience was so rewarding, we decided to launch Design System Summer Camp, which is a 2-week design system onboarding, allowing new designers to become acquainted with the design system from the start, affording them hands-on experience with how it's structured, organized, and utilized, ultimately ensuring the design system was strapped to their tool belt, ready to use as they embarked on future feature work. Back to you, Dan.
So this all gels together in the driveway design system collaboration continuum. That's a joke, like nobody calls it that, that's not real. But in addition to what Turtle described, we also invite designers to submit design system requests, whether those be net new things or bugs, what have you. We have the whole litany of ad hoc meetings and one-on-ones, like on a near daily basis. But the point of this slide is really just to say that when we focus on the quality of these ceremonies, the artifacts from those ceremonies become our deliverables. The design system work gets done anyway. And if you allow these ceremonies to cycle for a while, you really start to see the benefits of prioritizing collaboration over a more static deliverable. Things really start to feel more organic. Designers become stakeholders. I would venture to call them citizens. And you get improved visibility across the board and across products. Ultimately, I mean, knock on wood, we see an enhanced quality of product. Pretty much because nothing ends up existing in a vacuum, because it's all kind of together in this continuum or what have you. And with that, thanks for the time.
questions for Dan and Turtle Design Systems?
Got a participant experience to share that I thought was relevant. So research sites, for example, Derek and I, as principals being global lead across the different verticals, often bump into these first. And what happens is we start thinking about them and they snowball, we pull in individuals who might be best suited to answer them. Go back to the design system, work through the research spike, but the result is visibility. By us seeing it, suddenly we're seeing a journey team that's working on something like, oh, we got to go check the design system. They're updating this right now. They have a great new solution for you. So it's been a snowball effect of how new work is, by adding in more team members, it's in general of touching more teams and they're learning about it sooner.
The right people would be asked as necessarily, but I've worked for a lot of small businesses that start out doing really collaborative work, and as they scale, the wheels kind of fall off and they're really prioritizing rapid growth over maintaining that integrity of what got them to the growth point. So I'm kind of wondering if it's in hiring or onboarding and training, how you're sort of keeping the structure as you guys are growing.
That's a great question. Does anybody feel passionately about answering it?
Support from the top down. Everyone. What Tyler was previously presenting, seeing the dividends that have been afforded to them and to the organization by having some level of self-governance around how they organize their work. Not fun to be interrupted when somebody simply asks me, hey, where is X and where is Y? So people are incented to do things a certain way. When you think about the collaboration and leveraging the design system, it's the same. When you're going into a design review or advisory board meeting and almost on the line with the rest of the platform, where you've done something sort of way off to the right to take maybe a chance or a risk, we oftentimes end up starting over and getting with the design system team and really pitching why it is we're doing something, rather than just going off on their own. And because the design system team is so collaborative and so easy to engage, they'll hear you out, they'll listen. Being approachable in business is, in my opinion, core to being a successful company, both in the product that you deliver to your end consumer as well as, with one another day in, day out. So we're fortunate to have a great team. We've been incredibly intentional with our hiring. Very slow to hire, albeit despite growing a fast team, particularly a big team in a short amount of time. We have a rigorous interview process for a small business, but we're proud of everyone that we work with and everything we've built.
Thanks, Ross. Awesome. That is a wrap. Appreciate all the time you spent with us. Thank you and good day.
Some coffee and donuts, chat for a little while. Do you have any more time this morning?
And or sell your next car at driveway.com.